We left off last week. Achachayis, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom.
What page?
Yud base, opposite of page 22.
So how many lines from the bottom?
6. Achachayis.
Six lines from the bottom.
From the bottom on the right side or the left?
Left side, page Yud base.
Keep it zero.
I think you're looking at Yud Dalet.
Period base.
No, not period Yud base, page Yud base.
Page is
So a question that has bothered and perplexed theologians for thousands of years is that if we're to assume that Hashem is good, then why did Hashem create a world wherein there's so much bad? And bad on so many different levels. And if we believe it to be axiomatic that Hashem is etzem hatoiv, the essence of good, and as Kabbalah says, v'teva hatoiv lahetiv, and it is the nature of the good to do good, to be benevolent. So if Hashem is so good, then why did He create a world in which there is so much evil? How does evil come from good? How does that happen? And there are many different levels of good, many different levels of, when we talk about what's wrong with this world. You know, if you were God, then you had to redo the world and get rid of all the bad stuff. So how would you go about changing the world? You know, there's.
Well, first the terrorists have to go.
Sorry?
First we have to execute all the terrorists.
We have to, but that's our free will. Now, how would you change the world? You would make it that we shouldn't have free will.
Be out of home and keep back. That's what he said.
The story is told, I believe it's about Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev, that he was sitting with a bunch of his colleagues, the Talmidim of the Masjid Magid, and they were discussing how they would do the world differently if they were Hashem. What sort of defects they would eliminate from the world. And I believe Yitzchak of Berditchev said, if I was Hashem, I would do it exactly as he did it. What does that mean? So, there are the difficult things that happen to us in life, the tragedies, the hardships, the challenges. So how do we deal with that? In other words, how are we to understand that from a Hashem who is a Bal Chesed, who is kind and who is merciful and who is good? So how do all these difficulties come? So the answer to that is very simple, that they're not bad. Nothing is bad. We have limited vision. Imagine a Martian landing from Mars and coming into his first place he enters is an operating room, and he sees there's a person lying on a stretcher, restrained, and there's a guy there in a mask with a knife cutting into him. So he would be screaming murderer and how evil he is, but that's because he didn't see the beginning, he didn't see the end, he's missing the context. And the person who he perceives to be a murderer is actually a Bal Chesed of the highest degree. And the same thing is with Hashem. We don't understand. I mean, there are many stories we have. The famous story about Nachum Ish Gamazu with Gamazu Latoiva and the box of earth, which turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. You have the story with Rabbi Akiva, when he said, Kol ma'ad aved Rachmana l'tavavid, everything that Hashem does for the good, when he went to the city and they didn't want to give him hospitality. I'm sure you know the story, and the wind put out the candle, and no? Okay, quickly. Rabbi Akiva always used to say, Kol ma'ad aved Rachmana l'tavavid, whatever Hashem does is for the best. He once went to a city, and he was looking for lodging for the night. He was traveling through, and the people in the city weren't very hospitable, and he was refused housing by everyone there. So he had no choice. So he went out to the field outside the city and he set up camp for the night. He's going to sleep in the field. And he said, whatever Hashem does is for the best. And whenever he would go, he had with him a few things. He had with him a donkey to carry his load. He had a candle so even by night he could learn Torah.
Chicken.
And he had a chicken to wake him up at midnight to be able to learn Torah. But as soon as Rabbi Akiva lies down to sleep, so a wild cat comes and devours the donkey, and then another animal comes and devours the chicken, and then a wind comes and blows out the candle, and each time Rabbi Akiva says, whatever Hashem does is for the best. In the morning, when he enters the city, he sees that during the night, a gang of robbers, marauders, had entered the city, pillaged the city, taken away everyone as captives. So he realized that his life was saved, because had he been granted hospitality by someone, he would have been among the captives, and the chicken or the donkey, the noise they would have made could have given away his location as well as the candle. So everything Hashem does is for the best. And this is something which we believe that whatever, we're going to talk about this more at length, Mir Hashem, later on in Tanya in Perek Chavav, chapter 26. The Alter Rebbe talks about this in greater detail. But the point remains, Hashem, nothing that comes from Hashem is bad. In the words of the Navi Yirmiyah, Echa mepiha elyon, lo yiseitze hara'os, that from heaven never comes something which is evil. There's only good that comes from heaven. However, there's two sorts of good that comes from heaven. There's good that we experience as good, and there's good that we don't experience as good. So when we have emunah in this, we're able to accept all that happens. It's not easy, obviously, having this level of emunah, but someone with this level of emunah can accept that everything that comes from Hashem is good. But whether or not we can emotionally accept our difficulties as good, it doesn't change the fact that this bad doesn't pose a theological problem, because it's not bad. Whatever Hashem does is good. So what's really bad?
Excuse me?
So what's really bad? If nothing's really bad?
When it hurts, it's bad.
No, I'm talking, what is really bad?
There's only evil, there's no bad. Evil is anything that Hashem does not desire.
Very good. The only thing that's really bad is not anything that happens to us, but the things that we do that are wrong. Hakol b'yidei shamayim chutz mi'yireh shamayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven except for Yireh Shamayim, meaning we have the choice to do the right thing or the wrong thing. Whatever Hashem does is right, but we have the ability to do wrong. And that's fascinating. You think into it. In the entire universe and in all the cosmos, not only the physical universe, but the spiritual entities, the malachim, no one has free choice. Everyone does exactly what Hashem wants of them. The donkey and the chicken and the candle and the angels and everything else, they're pre-programmed, and they don't, for one moment or one iota, they don't ever divert from the path that Hashem set them on. We're so proud of ourselves, the human species. But as it so happens, one of the things that make us unique is that we're the only ones who have the ability to do something that's really bad. Whenever we do an avera, whenever we do something that Hashem doesn't want, that is the only possibility for bad in the entire bria, and the entire creation. So that's bad. So when we started this lesson by asking why would Hashem create bad, we're not talking about bad that He does, because He doesn't do bad. But why would Hashem allow the possibility of us doing bad? Why would a kind and beautiful and benevolent Hashem build into the world the possibility of human beings doing bad?
This way I can make Teshuvah, I can make more mitzvot, more.
Yeah, see?
Teshuvah was
You're right.
all over the world.
This is where we're going to, based on what we learned last week. So, but first, let's talk a little. When the Eibishter created the world, this idea that human beings should be able to mess up, and the fact that they do mess up, is part and parcel of the plan. Couldn't be otherwise. The Medrash says that when Hashem was dictating to Moshe the Torah, word for word, and Moshe was writing. So when Hashem was describing the story of creation, so they got to the pasuk of Naasa Adam. Vayomer Elokim, and Hashem said, Naasa Adam, let us make man. And the Medrash says that Moshe turns to Hashem and says, what? Let us make man? Who's the us? What's the plural? Asa Adam, I will make man. He said, Hashem, do you realize what's going on over here? Okay, he didn't say it with those chutzpah words. But he said, Hashem, what you're doing right now is you're empowering every heretic to come, to point to the Torah and say, look, there's more than one God, more than one authority. And that's right, Moshe wasn't just describing something that might happen in theory one day, but actually happened. Exactly, that the Christians used that pasuk, Rahman al-Islam, to prove the Trinity.
Son of God.
Right. Hashem responds to Moshe with these words. This is what the Medrash says. Hashem responds, Ksoiv, you write. Exactly as I'm telling you to write. If someone wants to make the mistake, let them go and make the mistake. In other words, the fact that we are able to make mistakes is not something which is by the way. Hashem programmed it into the world. He made sure, when he wrote the Torah, he wrote it in a way that someone should be able to come and use it to be able to make a mistake. It's part of the original vision. There's an even more fascinating Medrash, Tanchuma, at least more fascinating to me. It says that when we know that Adam Rishon, before the sin of the Eitz Hadas, so he and Chava were immortal. They were not supposed to die. And then after Chet Eitz Hadas, so Hashem tells him, that you will eat bread by the sweat of your brow, until you return to the earth, because that's where you came from. The idea of death entered the human condition with Chet Eitz Hadas, that's really, before the Chet Eitz Hadas, when Hashem told Adam and Chava, and the day that you eat from the Eitz Hadas, you're going to die. What does that mean? They didn't die on that day. So as the Mefarshim learn, that day you become a person who dies. You become a dying creature.
You become immortal.
You become immortal, exactly.
Do you know how long they were there before they...
A few hours.
Only a few hours.
Couldn't hold it a little bit longer.
It's always easy to judge others.
Always the white folk.
That's also always easy to say. Anyways, Hashem wasn't very happy when Adam Rishon said that. When Adam Rishon blamed his wife, Hashem said, "You're a kafui tova. I give you the best present, and this is how you respond." What? Right. So the Medrash Tanchuma says that at that point, when he found out that he's going to die, Adam Rishon turns to Hashem and says, "You're playing a game with me." He said, "I'll give you a mashal. Let me draw for you an analogy." He says, imagine there's a man who decides that he's going to divorce his wife. So he goes off to the scribe, and he has a get written up, and he gets the witnesses and the names and everything is signed, and he puts it in his pocket, and he goes home, and his wife is there, and he tells his wife, "Bring me a cup of water, please." So she brings him a cup of water. He takes a sip. The water is warm. It's no good. Here's your divorce. So the wife says, "You're not divorcing me because the water was warm. You had that divorce sitting in your pocket. This was an excuse. It was an excuse." So Adam says the same thing. It says, Hashem, the Torah existed 2,000 years before the world was created. And what does it say in the Torah? Adam kiyamus ba'oil talks about the halachas of tumas meis, the halachas of the impurity that comes from contact with a dead body. You would not have written that in the Torah had you not known that we're going to die. So the Chet Eitz Hadas was an excuse. Meaning to say that this is all part of the Eibishter's plan, the Aveira Chet Eitz Hadas, and the possibility for mistakes and the inevitability of mistakes. And why would Hashem do that? So if you ask the average Jewish philosopher, what would they answer? So they would tell you something along the lines of a mashal from the Zohar, which we're going to learn at the end of Perek Yud, end of Perek Tes. The Zohar brings a mashal, brings an example of a king who had a son who was very sheltered. And he wanted to test his son to see how moral he is, how upstanding he is, and how devoted he is. And so the king goes, thank you very much. Outside the palace, there were some women of ill repute that used to hang out over there. And the king would always warn his son, don't ever be caught with one of these women. Don't ever have anything to do with them. It's a mashal from the Zohar. And then one day the king calls in one of these women and says, I have a job for you. I want you at all costs, I want you to seduce my son. And this woman, she might not be of sterling character, but she's a loyal, devoted subject of the king, that she is. And she has no choice but to obey, although she doesn't want the son to actually be seduced by her, but she has to do her job properly as the king commanded. So she goes and she follows the son, and she tries to catch him and to kiss him and to hug him. And what's the purpose of it all? The purpose of it all is that the son should refuse the advances, reject her, and then he is rewarded by the king for this reward, both in terms of nachas and in terms of actual reward. And the woman is also rewarded. And that's the Zohar gives the mashal, that's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is this unsavory character was retained by Hashem to do the dirty work. But not that Hashem wants us to do anything wrong. And it's not that even the Yetzer Hara wants us to do anything wrong. And the purpose is not that we should do anything wrong. The purpose is that we should remain faithful to Hashem. So, yes.
It's interesting because this is proven because when Hashem tells Adam, on the day you eat, you shall surely die, and he doesn't kill him. So the question is, did Hashem lie? No, he gave this, in other words, yeah, you should surely die if you don't do Teshuvah. Okay, so he gave him an opportunity to do Teshuvah. In other words, Hashem has all the time in the world. I said, on the day that you sin. But for Hashem, a day is not the same as...
We've moved past that.
Yeah.
Moved past that. We're holding now in the reason why. Right now, we're talking about the reason why that Hashem allows for evil. Because if there is no evil, there is no good.
Can't contrast it.
In other words, there is no virtue if I have no choice but to do the right thing, then there's nothing special about it. Just like if you program your computer to do a wonderful thing, no one says the computer is good. People say the programmer is good. No one gives reward to the computer. So if we were programmed to do the right thing, then what's the point of it all?
On the same token, we realize that, I don't want to get into this issue, but just that we say, in other words, that it's easier for a person because it's more low says and essays. But even so, my uncle Rabbi said about Hashem the Baal Tanya, that the Baal Tanya says better for a person not to be created. Easier, but it doesn't say toiv, obviously.
Right.
Because everything Hashem does, it's called Hashem.
That's true. Not sure how that relates, but everything you said is definitely true. Yeah, it's easier not to be born, but it's not better not to be born.
Because there is to fall into temptation. There's more low says than
yeah.
But even so, one can overcome it.
But any time one does something that is good, what makes it good? What makes it virtuous? What makes it righteous? The fact that I had the option of not doing it. The fact that I had the option of doing something bad and instead I did something good. Right. So therefore, going back to our original question, why did Hashem create bad in this world? Because He wanted good. Mm-hmm. The purpose isn't the bad, the purpose is the good. But the problem is that if there is no bad, there is no good. So therefore He had to create this temptation, and the purpose of the bad is not that we should stumble and that we should fall. The purpose of the bad is that we should resist its lure, and if we don't, then we're at fault. Then we did something bad, not Hashem. Because in Hashem, everything is part of the plan of good. Even the bad is only there in order to allow for the existence of good. So that too. But based on this, what do we have? We need to cover some ground over here. Take questions later. But So what do we have over here? Bad is bad. But this really gives new meaning to the words unnecessary evil. Because that evil is necessary. We don't like it, but it's a necessary evil, because without evil we can't have a goodness. And that is the standard answer that you'll get. Hashem is good, and His intentions is good, and He's merciful, and He's kind, and He wants to be good to us. And because He wants to be good and kind to us, and because He wants to reward us, therefore He has to create also the contrast, like you said. And that's correct.
It's like light and darkness. The absence of light is dark.
Right.
Even though it was a brie b'fnei atzmo, but
Correct.
That's
And
what
everything
I'm
what we're saying over here is correct. But that's a simple understanding. And then there's a deeper understanding. And the deeper understanding is what we're just introduced to in Tanya last week, and which you already jumped on right away. See, you go straight to the point. What's your name?
Sasson Azar.
Sasson. And that is, if we're to understand the function of Teshuvah, of true Teshuvah, as doinus nasolei kezachias, as a ladder that has the ability to bring us to a higher and greater place than where we could have been otherwise. Because as the Gemara says, b'makim shebal tshuva oimdim, ein tzaddikim gemurim yichel malamid, that the level of a tzaddik, a level of Baal Tshuva, is unattainable to the tzaddik. So then evil is not a necessary evil. Then Hashem created two goods. There is the apparent good, and that is Torah and mitzvahs. And then there's all the other stuff, and the purpose of that is that we should transform it through Teshuvah also into goodness. It's not pshat that Hashem created evil, and the purpose of the evil is only just to be avoided, and the moment that we don't avoid it, then suddenly there is no redemption for that evil. The reason why the Eibishter created an Aveira is because of Teshuvah.
It's a vehicle for Teshuvah.
And the reason why a person does an Aveira is to enable him to do Teshuvah. It's a radical way of looking at it. It's not, I did an Aveira, what can I do? So let me make the best out of the circumstances. Life gives me lemons, so I'm making lemonade. So I'll do Teshuvah. The reason why Hashem allowed you to do the Aveira is because He knew that ultimately through Teshuvah you could turn it around to good. Otherwise, Hashem would never have allowed you to do an Aveira. Because Hashem, as a Father, loves us so much. We know as parents, every path that we have in life is created by Hashem. Every temptation we have is created by Hashem. Every circumstance that we're put into is created by Hashem. If we're to think back into the failures of our lives, and we'd ask ourselves, how many different things managed by Hashem, how many different things which Hashem micromanaged and coordinated did He put into place to allow me to fail in that way? Whether it's nature, whether it's nurture, whether it's circumstances, whether it's my temperament that He gave me, whether it's the parents that He gave me. How many circumstances did He put in place? And Hashem would not have done that unless He knew that this path, this evil path, which He tells us, please don't take that path. I don't want you to go down that path. It's painful, it's hard, it's difficult. Do Torah, do mitzvah, stay in the light, don't go to the darkness. It's horrible. You lose your connection with Hashem, your relationship with Hashem. But the fact that Hashem ultimately does allow the possibility of that path is because that path can lead to Teshuvah, which is even higher and even greater than what a tzaddik can achieve. And this gives a new depth, a new oimek, into what we're learning about last week, how on the sixth day of creation, as we said, that Hashem looks at the world and says, "V'hinei tov mi'od," the world is exceedingly good, and that's everything in the world. There's nothing that Hashem put in the world which isn't ultimately meant to serve the divine plan, and the Aveira is also included in that. The fact that He allows for Aveiras is because that has the potential to bring us to a greater place. Now, this is a very, very deep idea, a profound idea, and it's also a subtle idea, because chas v'shalom, to walk out of this class saying, okay, so then Aveira is not so bad because I can do Teshuvah. The Mishnah in Yuma says, Ho'imer echta v'ashuv ein maspikin b'yadi l'aseh Teshuvah. And the Eibishter wants us to do mitzvahs. He doesn't want us to do Aveiras. But at the same time, we all know, maybe we spoke about this once, maybe not, that when the person hits rock bottom, a lot of people afterwards, they say that was the most amazing moment in their life. How is that? Because that's what impelled them
Get up.
to get up. I think we spoke about this last week, right? Maybe no, to turn themselves around. But no one wants to hit rock bottom. No one wants to, it's...
What about the question is, why is it that way? In other words, why is that a greater good? If you do tshuva, why...
That we spoke about last week. In Bekitzer, just very, very short, the reason why is because the passion and the enthusiasm and the relationship, the fiery relationship that the Baal Tshuva has with Hashem is unparalleled by that tzaddik, because absence makes the heart fonder. And when the person who's lived in darkness, and then afterwards, finally, he appreciates the light.
Once he experienced the opposite of life.
Right. So the purpose of an Aveira, so when a person does an Aveira, the person should be crushed by the fact that he did Aveira and devastated, and it was a terrible thing. It was rebellion against Hashem.
Why is he though?
But at the same time, the person who does Aveira has to understand that why did Hashem allow me to do that? Not Hashem didn't make me do that. I just want to make that clear. Why did He allow me to do that? Why did He make that path even available to me? Because He knows that even if I am stupid and I do follow that path, through Teshuvah I can make that, turn that around, make that even greater than I could have been otherwise.
Why is he crushed though? Why doesn't Avera crush somebody that he turns around? That's the question. Why doesn't he just, why impel Teshuvah? Why can't we just go around in darkness and be happy?
The Rambam says that part of Teshuvah
Well, I
is
just asked
charata.
that question.
I think he's trying to answer you.
Part of Teshuvah is charata.
That's what I just said.
Yeah,
Right?
but why does a person have karata? Why can't
No,
a person
so
walk around in
that's
darkness
normal.
and be happy the rest of his life?
That's normal.
What's he missing?
Even dealing with a person.
Even when I have a concert, even the best people don't talk to God. So what is he missing? If he would be the biggest tzaddik of the world, he still wouldn't talk to God. So what is he missing? I don't understand. Why is he person do tshuva? Want to do tshuva?
I can't answer that question.
Can I suggest something?
Some people are addicts.
Because Hashem gives to us when we don't deserve. That's the midas hachesed. But the midas hagevura, which the world would be destroyed by, is satisfied only when we earn what we get. So when we ignore Hashem, we get, it's like lechem ani. We feel we're getting without deserving. The most satisfying thing in the world is to get something you deserve, and that's why we do tshuva, because we want to deserve something.
Okay. So moving on.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
It's bothering me that a lot of averot that written in the Torah, sometimes it said, mot yumat. I mean, it doesn't give you a chance for tshuva. Somebody discussed the Shabbat, mot yumat. So somebody here that said, I have no path for tshuva. They want me to, Hashem want me to die.
It's a very good question.
Call him. If a person is by Bezdin judged for stilo or whatever it is, right? So they say vidui.
They do tshuva. And there's another point. A person who is put to death by Bezdin is supposed to do tshuva. Tshuva is mechaper. But there's another point. And a very big point of...
If it's not a person, by a person, he does tshuva, he won't die. I mean, Bezdin,
Right. Tanai de Behuda that talks about that.
But courage, if a person does something and he does tshuva, it says
It helps, right. There's sometimes when the damage is so great that the person can or cannot do tshuva in this world. But then there's the concept of Gilgulim also, which applies here. And things can be rectified. Everyone does tshuva. Whether we Gilgul Zeh, we Gilgul Acher, everyone does tshuva. Hashem makes a lot of plans. No one ever gets pushed away. Everyone eventually does tshuva.
Give another chance, and another chance, and another chance.
The Eibishter gives as many chances as needed. Okay, so we have what we explained so far in this Perek is that there are two levels of klipa in this world. There's the klipa which is called klipa snega, which is the klipa which we can interact with, even though it's something which belies and hides the godliness within and its godly purpose. But when we use it l'shem shamayim. We use it for Hashem. Then we're Maila to Kedusha, we elevate it to Kedusha. And then there's Gimel Klippas Hatmeis, the lower level of Klippa, which completely hides the godly intent within it. And that is always remains Klippa, with the only exception being either till Mashiach comes, or if a person does a Teshuvah me'ahava, this sort of Teshuvah. So, going back to what we spoke about a few weeks ago, the world is divided into three. There's Kedusha, Klippas Nega, Gimel Klippas Hatmeis. And now, what we're going to talk about is two interesting exceptions in the realm of Gimel Klippas Hatmeis. One exception because it's a little higher than most Gimel Klippas Hatmeis, and one exception which is a little lower than most Gimel Klippas Hatmeis. But I also want to make one thing clear, because before we move on to this. When a person messes up, when you offend someone else, offend is not the best example. Let's say you go and you get angry at your neighbor, and you take a hammer and you destroy his car. So there are two things that have happened over here. Number one, you offended your friend, you hurt him. In other words, you did something nasty. And number two is
Your anger.
you damage his property. You did actual damage, which has to be compensated. It has to be fixed. And in term and you could do one without the other. You can go fix up the car, but not apologize. In which case, the guy didn't forgive you, although the damage was fixed, but the guy didn't forgive you for what you did. Alternatively, you can go and you can ask forgiveness and beg, but let's say it happened to have been that it was a Bentley and it cost $300,000 and you don't have the money to replace that. And the friend is a very, very nice guy and he forgives you, but you didn't fix the damage that you did. And in terms of our relationship with Hashem, this is also correct. When we do an Aveira, there are two things that happened over here. The first thing is, we rebelled against Hashem. What kind of chutzpah is this? Hashem puts you down in this world. He tells you what to do. He created you. He gives you everything you have. And you have the chutzpah to go and to defy His will. So one thing we have to do, Teshuvah, is we have to pashat, ask Hashem for forgiveness. We have to regret it and ask Hashem for forgiveness. But then, as we're beginning to understand over here, every Aveira that we do also has actual implications. It has ramifications. There's a certain element over here which we lower down to Gimel Klippas Hatmeis. The damage that we did. Last week we spoke about how the Gemara says in Yuma that if someone does Teshuvah Me'ira, someone does a regular Teshuvah, so Hashem forgives him. The person's forgiven. When the person dies and goes up to heaven, he's ushered straight into Gan Eden. When we say that Hashem is Erech Hapayim, that Hashem, that's absolutely correct. When a person does an Aveira, regardless of the Aveira, regardless of how heinous the crime was, we believe that if a person does Teshuvah, meaning the person sincerely regrets what he has done and asks Hashem for forgiveness, Hashem forgives. That doesn't mean, however, that the damage was necessarily fixed. To fix the damage, in other words, to pull out that thing from Gimel Klippas Hatmeis, for that, you need Teshuvah Mi'ahava. Then we transform the action or the object into holiness actually. Zdoinus, not so like Kazachias, the Averis become mitzvah. So those are the two parts in Teshuvah. Number one, we need to secure forgiveness. And number two, we need to fix up what we messed up. And sometimes we do one without the other. Sometimes Hashem can forgive us. That doesn't mean that the damage was...
How you fix up something when a person is nifta already? Not here in the world. Doesn't have a chance to...
So as we said, there's a next Google for that.
Google?
Next Google.
Are we talking about damage to the soul or damage to the world?
Both.
To the soul also. How you can do the show?
No, I'm good. Thank you. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about somewhat of a maybe uncomfortable or unpopular or both topic, and that is the Aveira of Hitzah Zera Levatala. It's a nice way to say that in English.
Wasting seed.
Wasting seed, thank you. And what's interesting is that although in Kabbalah this avera is considered to be very
Grievous.
very grievous, and talks about the different levels of teshuvah that have to be done, and how, as we'll see soon, it talks about the incredible amount of klipa and impurity that results from this. But what's interesting is that we don't find expressly in the Torah that it should be prohibited. In Parshas Acharei and in Parshas Kedoshim, where it talks about all the forbidden relationships, this avera of Eitzah Zer Levatala, wasting seed, isn't mentioned. So on the one hand, we know it's absolutely forbidden. But on the other hand, the Torah doesn't mention it. Why this distinction? If it's so forbidden, and if it's so awful, Erva Eidan it's mentioned, but it's not mentioned. You're right. And Alter Rebbe, when he says, he's very clearly when he says that he says Lehuskar Avoin Zer Levatala B'Torah Bechlal Biyos Asuris. In other words, in the context of the Biyos Asuris, it's not mentioned. Why? That would have been the proper place. And even by Erva Eidan, it's only alluded to. It's not clearly. It's not clearly in the.
It's not a natural activity. Torah is supposed to say, okay, red car racing is prohibited. Well, it's not a natural activity.
If car racing is dangerous to life and limb, then the Torah clearly forbids us to endanger ourselves. And if it's not dangerous, then there's nothing wrong with it. The Torah doesn't take anything for granted. Whatever is prohibited in the Torah. We don't take things for granted. So the Rebbe says like this. Let's do inside. And again, we're 6 lines from the bottom of page Yud Beis Achachayas. However, Hachayis shebetipos zera, the vitality, the chayis, the energy, which is in the drops of seed, sheyatzu menel avatala, which were wasted. Av shiyar davenichlala b'shalish klipas hatmeis, even though that the energy, the vitality in these drops, taka, because this is an avera, so the energy descends into gimel klipas hatmeis, the lowest level of klipas. Harizu elo meshan b'teshuvah nechoina. You don't need Teshuvah mi'ava to pull it out of Gimel Klippus HaTmeis. Unlike other Averis, which the only way to redeem the act or the object is through Teshuvah mi'ava, with this Avera, you don't need that. All you need is a Teshuvah Nechoina, which means a proper Teshuvah, a regular Teshuvah. And, u'bikavana atzuma b'kriyishma shalamita, and with incredible kavana by kriyishma shalamita. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says, kavana atzuma, incredible kavana means pirush amilas. Means focusing on the words and concentrating on what the words say. Kenoida Ma'arizal, as is known that Arizal is the one who says this, that the tikkun for Zer Levatala is tshuva, normal tshuva, and kavana by kriyishma. Umurum is b'Gemara, and this idea is also alluded to in the Gemara, which says Kol hakir kriyishma al mitasai. It says whoever reads kriyishma shalamita, the kriyishma before going to bed. It's as if the person is holding a double-edged sword in his hand. And Rashi says to destroy the mazikin, the various negative energies. What are these negative energies? So in Kabbalah it's explained, this way we destroy the body of the klipos, shenasu levush l'chayish betipos, that became the garment for the energy which were in these drops. And through kriyishma, we use this physical, metaphoric sword to destroy the klipos, the bodies of the klippa, and therefore the energy, the vitality within these drops can go back up to kedusha, as is known to the Kabbalists. And therefore, therefore the avera, the sin of wasting seed, is not mentioned in the Torah, among the other forbidden relationships. Even though, listen to these words over here, shechamor mehem, even though in a certain respect it is more, as you said, more stringent than them. The gadol avoinoi, and the avera is bigger, bebechinas hagadlus v'ribui hatuma v'aklipa shemoilid umarbe b'moid mioid, in terms of the greatness and the amount of tuma and klippas that a person gives birth to. In fact, it's brought down that it's like making a marble of klippa. It's like making literally a marble of klippa. That's what that avera does. But it's saras zedel vatala yoser, and this is more maybe asuris than the klippa that's created through biyas asuris, through forbidden relationships.
Why is the tshuva much more lenient?
So why is the tshuva much more lenient? However, shebebiyas asuris, when it comes to forbidden relationships, So here we have to understand, I'll do this first outside, then I'll do this inside. Everything in this physical world, I'm going to talk words now, which I'll give a disclaimer beforehand. I can't say I fully understand them, but I'll repeat the words. Everything here in this physical world is a mirror of the way things are, of a certain spiritual reality. For those of you who are at all familiar with the works of Kabbalah, the idea of male and female, with the male being the mashpia, the giver, and the female being the makabel, the recipient, is something which is very... to say that it's very frequent in Kabbalah would be an understatement. If you look in the real Kabbalistic texts of the Arizal, it's almost like every other line. You have references to the yichudim, the unities of the different spiritual and godly male faculties and female faculties. And just like you have that in Kedusha, so you have the same idea in Klippa. There's what's called the oyer, and there's called the keli. There's the light, and then there's the vessel. There's the mashpia, there's the makabel. And when a person engages in a forbidden relationship, so mirroring the physical reality, or it's probably the other way around, the physical reality is mirroring the spiritual reality. So the male element of the klipa is niklat. How do you say niklat? Is absorbed by the female element of klipa, and therefore it is very difficult to once again to take out the chayis, because it's been absorbed in the female element of klipa already. Just as in the physical reality, when a person engages in a physical relationship, there is both the male and the female. However, by the sin of Zera Levatala, so over there is no nukva de klipa. There is no female klipa, so there's a lot of energy that's created, negative energy. But because it hasn't been absorbed by the female element of klipa, it's easier, therefore, to extract it. And all it requires is a regular tshuva and kavana by Krishma, because it hasn't been absorbed by the female element of klipa. So again, those are the words. I can't tell you I fully understand what's the male element of klipa and the female element of klipa, but this does answer our question. On the one hand, it's a horrible aveira, because the amount of klipa that's generated is much more than by a forbidden relationship. On the other hand, however, the lesser amount of klipa, which is generated through forbidden relationships, has been absorbed, and therefore it's much harder to extract it. The only way to extract the chayis by a forbidden relationship is through tshuva mi'ava, as discussed last week, is through a tshuva which causes doinus naso like kazachias, that avera should become mitzvahs, as opposed to zera levatala, because it hasn't been absorbed, so therefore a regular tshuva suffices also. So therefore zera levatala is an interesting exception to the general rule of averas, because every avera is gimel klibas hatmeis, and the only way to redeem it is through tshuva mi'ava, and zera levatala is gimel klibas hatmeis, but it doesn't require tshuva mi'ava in order to be able to redeem it. So that's one exception to the rule. Let's continue inside. Rak, 5 lines from the top of page 24, last word in the line. Rak, however, should be asurais, by forbidden relationships, you're adding vitality and energy into an extremely impure klipa, to the point that you cannot just extract the energy from there through a regular tshuva. And the Alter Rebbe in the footnote on the side says, Mipnei, because it was absorbed, biyisoid de nukva de klipa, in the level of yisoid, of the female aspect of klipa, hamekabelos, which receives v'kiletas and absorbs hachayis mahakdusha, the energy from kedusha. That's the way it is by forbidden relationships. Mashenkin b'zer levatala, as opposed to by the avera of zer levatala, she'ein sham b'chinas nukva the klipa. Over there isn't the female element of klipa. Rak only shekoichiseha v'chayliseha malbishim lachayis shebetipois ki yedu al yedichein. It's only that the powers and the armies of klipa, they surround the chayis, but it isn't absorbed. It isn't absorbed by the female element, so therefore it can be extracted. As opposed to, sorry?
So maybe it's not worse than abuse of sisters. How you know it's worse than abuse of sisters also?
Because the poil calls man that the tshuva wasn't done, the amount of of klippa was created is more than by bias asuras.
Okay, let me ask you something. But by Zera Levatala, aren't you bringing down the shamas, whereas forbidden relationships you're not bringing down the shamas?
I don't know. That's
you know what I'm saying? That has to be rectified. That's what they talk about.
You have to ask a Kabbalist. I don't know.
They in other words, Hashem rectifies the neshamas that are brought down. But when I'm simply asking a question, when the clip is absorbed by the female element, like you're saying, it's hard to extract. Are those neshamas all those neshamas brought down by the zera? That's the question.
I don't know. It's not discussed here, and I'm not an expert in the topic. I really don't know. So again, by bias asuras, by forbidden relationships, you cannot extract and redeem the energy of the act and of the drops, unless the person does tshuva with incredible love, to the point that zdoinus merits become zachia, that aveirus become like mitzvahs. So that was exception number one. To an Avera, which is an exception from the rule. And now we're going to learn another exception, but this exception is to the other extreme. Something which is worse than another Avera. And that is, let's look inside it. Now we will understand that which our sages tell us. This is based on a pasuk by Shlomo Malach, I think in Mishli. Shlo yuchal liskoin, right? Who has messed up to the point that he can't fix. This is a person who engaged in a forbidden relationship, and a mamzer was born. What does that mean? He messed up and he can't fix it up. Isn't it a cardinal belief by Yidden that ein davar ein b'fnei teshuvah, that you could do teshuvah for anything? What do you mean you messed up and you can't fix it up? But based on we learned beforehand, we can understand that there are two different ideas. Of course, if a person does teshuvah, Hashem will forgive him. And of course that after 120 years he goes straight to Gan Eden and they don't mention anything. The question isn't whether he's forgiven, which of course he is if he does teshuvah. The question is, can he fix what he's done wrong? And the answer is usually when a person does an Aveira through teshuvah, mi'ahava, not only do you attain forgiveness, but you fix it. But when a mamzer is born, how can you fix it? The klippa is right here. The klippa became a physical reality. You can't fix what you have done. You can gain forgiveness, but you can't fix. So that is the opposite extreme of what we're talking about. In other words, that there's this is the Avera, which is the exception in the other way. In other words, Zera Levatala is an Avera which you don't need Teshuvah Mi'ava in order to elevate it. And if a mamzer is born, that's an Avera that even Teshuvah Mi'ava cannot fix fully and completely. Can't fix what was happened. You can do tshuva. You can be a tzaddik afterwards. But you can't. You didn't. But the damage was done. Can't change the fact that the damage was done. But again, this person could be about tshuva. Could be a holy person and can be because we believe in redemption. We believe in. But the damage was done inside.
But why the mamzer have to suffer?
What?
Why the mamzer have
does
to
an
suffer?
innocent boy girl, whatever?
That's a different question. It's a good
It
question.
is.
But
It's a different question, and it doesn't. No, not next time. It doesn't really.
Why do you have to fix?
Sometime after class, but not today, because today I'm running. My brother's Shara Brachas. Brother got married this week.
Why do you have to fix damage?
Why do you have to fix the damage? I think that it's pretty obvious to most people that when you do damage, it's your responsibility to try to fix it if possible.
So a tzaddik's going to end up in Gehenna a little bit because of the damage?
I didn't say that. The contrary. I said that if you do tshuva, you're not going to go to Gehenna, you go straight to Gan Eden.
So then,
in other words, because
you're pardoned, you're off the hook.
Okay, so if you feel that if you're pardoned off the hook, then all's good, then you're right. But some people feel a sense of responsibility. They damage, they want to fix it.
Well, I mean, if you hold by what he said, why does a mamzer have to suffer? You would say that, so I made a mamzer, so what? I mean, a mamzer could be a big Talmud Chacham. So what's so bad about a mamzer?
It's a different discussion. Inside. Sha'az, 4 lines in the bottom of the page, because then if a person gave birth to mamzer, even if the person does such an incredible tshuva, it's impossible to elevate the chayis to holiness, because it already came down to Elam Haza. V'nislapsha beguf basar v'dam, and it entered into the body of a flesh and blood. So we finished Perek Zayin. Kind of an unsavory Perek in terms of but knowledge is power, as we said a few weeks ago. This is counterintelligence, and part of our mission here is to know what we're battling, what we're combating. This is the agenda of the Nefesh Bahamis. And if you remember, we said also Zelu Ummah, that Hashem created one opposite of the other, and that the Nefesh Halikis corresponds and parallels the Nefesh Bahamis. If you remember, when we spoke about the Nefesh Halikis, we spoke about it earlier on in Perek Dalid and Perek Gimel. We spoke about the Nefesh Halikis has its essence, its seichel and midas. It has what it is, its core components. And then there are the levushim, the garments, machshava diber ma'isa. And we spoke at length about the idea that as holy as the soul is, what the garments can accomplish, the soul cannot accomplish by itself. In other words, the connection to Hashem. So how does the soul really and openly and consciously connect to Hashem is only through thought, speech, and action, only through doing Torah and mitzvahs. So the garments lift up the soul to higher than where it could have been otherwise. The soul without the garments is limited in how holy it is. With the garments, with thought of Torah and speech of Torah mitzvahs and actions of Torah mitzvahs, it lifts up the neshama even higher. And the exact same thing is true, now we understand with the Nefesh Bahamis in the opposite way. The Nefesh Bahamis of a Jew, as we explained, is Klipas Noiga. Not so bad. When a person does an Aveira, which we do that by utilizing the Machshava Diber Maisa of the Nefesh Bahamis, the thought, speech, and action of the Nefesh Bahamis, so the person's actually lowering the Nefesh Bahamis to even lower than it could have been. So the levushim of the Nefesh Halikis parallel the Nefesh Bahamis in terms of that both of them magnify, and not just a little, infinitely, the levushim of the Nefesh Halikis, the garments, the thought, speech, and action of the Nefesh Halikis, bring the Nefesh Halikis to a much greater height of godliness and holiness, and the levushim, the garments of the Nefesh Bahamis, lower down the Nefesh Bahamis to a much lower level of klipa than what it naturally is. And God willing, Mr. Hashem, next week we will begin Perek Ches.
Mazel tov. Go for Sheva.
Thank you.
Anybody wants chillin', there's chillin' next door.
First we have to daven Mari.
I still want your conversation, but I have to learn.
What?
Next week you're talking about
No, I just meant that there's no tangible reward to do Teshuvah. There's satisfaction in the soul. But there's nothing, what's impelled someone to do Teshuvah? Because we feel guilty.
Beautiful.
We're being given tested every day by Hashem. And when we don't live up to it, we feel like we're taking
Was
something we
minyan?
don't,
Yeah, that's
we
what
don't
it is.
deserve.
Filet mignon.
What?
I wouldn't mind a little bit of filet.
Talking
No,
smart
I'm
to you.
saying
It says,
There.
you like that, huh?
We don't, no, I don't do
I go
Teshuvah.
to you and
Hashem gives us
that Torah.
what we don't deserve. He gives us life. So we want to deserve it.
I think the lesson in itself is an opportunity
Yeah.
to come back.
Children from next door.
It's a mission. But ultimately, even though